In this video, the middle-aged nerds discuss spoilers from books they read decades ago. Do you really need a spoiler alert? Do you really?
Hi, I'm Bill, also known as Matt Stagger.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to Non-Terrestrial Half-Life, the YouTube show where we reread books from our youth and see if they still hold up. We're joined this week by our friend Mitch. How you doing, Mitch?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for
Many of
being
you
here.
might know him as Older's Ears. So welcome. Glad to have you on. We've had fun having you on the other show. So figured we'd have you on this channel too. And you brought us a classic that you wanted to read. As you guys can see behind Bill, we read A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I was starting to blank on the name for a second there. Wow.
I'm like, really?
The author's name. The author's name. I could see the title
That's
there,
even
but I
worse.
had the author's name. Yeah, I know. I don't know what's wrong. But yeah, we Bill and I both read this way long ago. I read it in 7th grade. When did you read it, Bill?
Freshman year of high school.
Oof. Was it forced upon you?
Yes, it was.
I'm sorry. I for some reason chose to read it on my own. I don't remember my reasoning for that. I just picked it up and started reading it, and I had my English teacher said, "Good luck with that." I'm like, "Oh, I'll be fine." And well, I got through it. I barely remembered any of it, but I got through it. So, do you guys remember, or Mitch, do you remember when you first read it?
Uh, Kind of, sort of, in a way. I had read the David Copperfield back in high school, and I really enjoyed reading Dickens. So over the next number of years, I read a few of his. So I was probably in my early 20s when I read it.
Okay.
And that was the last time I read it. So
Now this is supposed to be half your life ago. That's only a quarter of your life ago.
Yeah, that's quite a while ago. So
I'm just
yeah,
teasing, man.
I'd say it was, probably 45 years ago that I read it.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was just surprised at how much I had forgotten. I mean, it's hard to retain everything, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
There were
I'm
several
almost,
characters that I had no idea they were even in there.
Yeah, there were quite a few I forgot about as well. In fact, I had to
yeah,
keep notes, and I'm like, wait, this guy, he's servant, ex-servant. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Forgot about them. Uh,
yeah, it's almost 40 years for me. So, yeah, because I did read this like early mid 80s, and that's a long time ago now. So I don't, yeah, I didn't remember much of it. I remembered the opening line, the opening sentence, which is
well, who
apparently
doesn't?
like 300 pages long. And I remembered the end with, what's his name? Carton,
Pardon, yeah.
Sidney Carton. Sounded like the guy I listened to, Anton Lester's audio, it sounded like he was saying cotton. Just with his accent, it just came out as cotton. That's why when I watched something
Yeah,
else
it's
on it, I'm
Carton.
like, oh, it's carton. It's
Yeah,
carton. Okay. Yeah,
the
that had
one
me
guy I
confused for
want
a
to
bit.
punch in the face more than any other character. Yeah, that guy.
Wow. Even
Oh.
with what he does at the end.
Well, it's kind of because of what he does at the end. I've never been a fan of that. It wasn't a trope at the time, so I don't want to call it a trope when Dickens wrote it.
Right.
And I could see how it comes off as quite romantic. In fact, I remember when I first read it, that was one of the things I loved about it, was this sort of romantic nature of his sacrifice. As I grew up to be an adult after The Great Gatsby and some other stuff, I'm kind of like, those people are idiots, man. So maybe I'm just bitter. I don't know.
That book you just mentioned is one that I will not reread.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So don't try to talk me into it for this or the other channel.
I wasn't planning on.
Yeah. Okay. Good. I detested that book. I it's probably my least favorite book that I was ever forced to read in school.
Mine was Moby Dick. That thing was atrocious. I'm sorry. I don't
That's the
care
one I
what
didn't
people say.
finish.
Moby Dick is atrocious. The
Oh,
prose is atrocious. It is just it's it's not good. The
I
story
never read
behind it
Moby
is a
Dick.
way better book.
Okay.
The true story behind it is a way better book than Moby Dick actually ended up
Gotcha.
being.
Hmm. Curious. All right, I've never
So,
read Moby Dick, and
oh, you're not missing anything.
I actually kind
I
of
would.
enjoy The Great Gatsby.
Hey, I know millions of people have loved that book.
I didn't
Millions
hate
of
it.
people have loved that book.
Yeah, I didn't hate it.
I'm fine with them loving everybody else loving that book. You know, it's like people like shrimp. I hate shrimp, you know, so, but I'm not going to try to stop anybody from eating shrimp. I'm going to stop them from putting it in food that I'm going to be eating. But, you know, that's about my only rule with shrimp is don't put it in my food.
So you're not at fault for Red Lobster going under.
No, no.
But
My
no.
family is single-handedly. My wife, in fact.
It's one reason why I'm glad I'm not a coastal dweller, you know, living on the ocean, you know, in an oceanside city or town, because there'd just be way too much seafood everywhere for me, and I'd be stuck with it.
I love
But
seafood. So
I don't deal with seafood well. I don't know why. I just as I got later into my teens, it just started sitting poorly with me.
I mean,
But we
crab,
can,
lobster, you don't eat those?
oh
Wow.
no,
Okay.
I eat birds and I eat mammals. That's it. Birds and mammals.
Well,
well,
technically
that's
humans are
Well, and
mammals. So
vegetables.
you heard it here first. Glenn is a cannibal.
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
much more so than the French peasants were.
Yeah.
Ouch. Wow.
Yeah,
Need to change my last name to Donner.
I had forgotten about the passages where they were basically told to eat grass and
Yeah.
things of that
Yeah.
nature. You know, it's like, you know, we always have in mind this thing about let them eat cake and so on. But you know, let them eat grass was that's just brutal.
The worst part is people do try to eat grass and still starve to death because you just can't get any nutrients.
Yep.
Not the nutrients you need.
This, I will say, I did forget how dark and depressing this book can be.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's big part of, I'm just going to say, I really hated my experience reading it this time. Granted, I was going through, as I mentioned to some people the other day, some anxiety that I don't know where it came from or why. It was hitting me for about a week, you know, where like waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly. I was just like on edge and trying to read this book and that state of mind. Just it wasn't conducive to a good time.
Yeah, you know,
And
even his passages where you know he's painting a fairly positive picture and such. Even those are always laced with that little bit of doubt that he introduces.
right.
And being as verbose as he is, it makes it all that much more difficult to, you know, absorb, you know, at least willingly, as it were.
Yeah. No,
I
I'm with you on that.
I have I've been told that my prose writing, my fiction prose writing, is sometimes a little on the purple side. I've had the word baroque used to describe my fiction prose. This dude, oh my God, more purple than the Joker ever wore. You know, the prose is just not just the tone of the book, but the prose. Just I was pulling my hair out listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that whole paragraph behind Bill is one freaking sentence,
Yep.
and
It
with
is.
like I think there's as many commas as there is words, and it just
Pretty close.
Now I know during
it just
when he was writing David Copperfield, it was being published on a weekly basis, and he was
serialized
Same
like
with
this.
this. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I was going to ask if this was because he was paid by the word, and so the more words, the more pay, and so on and so forth. You know,
Right.
Makes
obviously,
sense.
yeah. I forget what the magazine was or the newspaper was, but you know, he had to fill up columns, and that's one of the reasons he's so verbose. And he also has this tendency to be repetitive, uh, generally within a paragraph, where he'll describe a number of things, as far as where you're located, or what you're going through. And so he'll talk about, the village, the trees, the this, the that, the other thing. And then later in the paragraph, he'll go through the other thing, that, this, the trees, and the village. And so in essence, he goes one way at the beginning of a paragraph, it comes back uh, at the end of the paragraph. And he does that a number of times. So I find that to be, first of all, it gets tedious, but it's also a very interesting way to approach it.
He's padding his numbers, is what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's padding
I,
his
I,
numbers, is what he's doing. He's like, okay,
I,
I can say this in one sentence, or I can say this in 10. I'm going to say it in 10 because I get paid by the
well, see,
word.
Mhm.
you can do that without being super, super purple. I mean, this is almost the epitome to me of purple prose. I tried looking up and I couldn't find what magazine David Copperfield was originally published in. I was going to give you that data since you didn't know it offhand, Mitch.
Yeah, if you were
But
to say it, I would probably go, "Oh yeah, that was it." But I might still be mistaken. I don't know.
so, did this book affect your reading habits in any way the first time you read it? I can tell you this. I know I continued reading for a while, literary classics because I read actually, from that era and around that, well, a couple hundred years old at least, 100 years and more old. Because I read a bunch of other classics in a few years before high school. Um, like all of like the three or four Louisa May Alcott books. I read on my own. I read Scarlet Letter on my own at the time. A bunch of other stuff like that. And before that, I was literally just science fiction and fantasy, since I was 8. So it did change my reading experiences or habits.
Yeah, for me, I found that in the reread during book the second, I had set it down for about 4 or 5 days. I just kind of set it aside. I don't remember having done that the first time I read through. But as I said, that so long ago, it's kind of sketchy. But I was an avid reader at that time, so I'm sure I just plowed straight through.
For me, yeah, I don't think it really changed anything because, like I said, I was given this as an assignment in school. So I read through it. I remember writing the book report on it, and like I said, at the time, I was at that age where I found it all quite romantic, especially the sort of dying gesture of, "I'll go to the guillotine for your lover because I love you that much."
Yeah.
Um,
That's just.
yeah, I'm sure if I could find that paper, I would cringe at what I thought about it. But I don't think it really changed any of my reading habits other than I probably went right back to Stephen King right after this.
How often would you say you enjoyed the books that you had to read in school?
More than not, I'll believe it or not.
Really?
Honestly, yeah. Loved Romeo and Juliet. Loved yeah, only one I didn't like was Moby Dick. I mean, that was just bad.
Okay. I
Um,
never, like I said, I never finished Moby Dick.
I read Great Gatsby. I enjoyed it. I read um Great Gatsby, which I just said. Not that one. David Copperfield. Read
David
that.
Copperfield.
Well, I remember when I was a senior, I for some reason I could not get my head around the assignment book, and I talked to the teacher. I said, I can't stand this, and I can't even remember what it was. So she gave me as an alternative The Big Sky, and or Big Sky Country, something like that.
Hmm.
Fascinating story. And I actually think I ended up with an A in that one, that class that year, because it was something that really took my interest. But I think that's the only time in school, at least, that I said no to a book. I've started other books and said, "Oh no, never mind." But that was the only school issue I had.
I believe my book report on Moby Dick, I wrote dross and then I explained why it was dross, and I ended up getting a B on it. So my teacher apparently agreed because
You might have gotten that B just for knowing the word dross at that age.
oh, it was just so bad.
Well,
I like that word. Dross is one of those words I like that you never really hear used in conversation.
Yeah.
So thank you for using it out loud.
Yeah,
I'm used to seeing it in print.
Yeah, a lot of teachers too, when they grade you, they may grade you even though they disagree if you give good arguments to basically support how you feel about it. Because I mean, that's all a book report is. I mean, yes, you can say give a summary of the story. That's not a book report. But if
Right.
you express your feelings and all that, the teacher may think you're absolutely wrong. But if you present it properly and give good arguments, they're going to give you a decent grade.
Well, I mean, my whole thing was this is bad narrative fiction, and here's why it's bad. And teacher was like, okay, I can accept that. I'm like, I tried. I really did. I got about halfway through and went, this is just not worth my effort.
I made it a
That's
little
the
bit further.
only
I think
book I
was
think I
two-thirds.
DNF'd in school.
Yeah, yeah, for me too. And it was one of the first DNFs I ever did in general.
I
At
mean,
least
I read Hamlet at least 10 times. I absolutely loved it, stuff like that.
uh,
The rest of my class hated it. They were the same way that I was with Moby Dick. And I'm like, no, no, don't you see? This is so much better.
I can't disagree at all. It's a big step up.
Mhm.
So, the first time you read this book, who was your favorite character, and why?
I'm sure it was Carter.
I,
Like I said, I was in love with the romance of the idea of
yeah,
making the ultimate sacrifice for the one you love. So I'm sure that's who it was.
I
that's what
think
I'm thinking.
I kind of agree. As I said, I don't remember it well enough, and none of the other characters, except Miss Pross, stands out as being significant there at the end.
Right. I did like Miss
Yeah,
Frost. I was a little mad she
she's
was dead.
good.
I'm like, damn it.
Yeah, she's a good character. I don't strongly remember, but I can't imagine I liked anybody. It had to have been either Darnay or Carton that it was my favorite character when I read it. Just remembering what I was like then, um, it would have been one of the two of them, and that As to now with most recent read, it's definitely Dr. Mena for me.
Yeah, Monet, absolutely. Dr. Monet ended up being my favorite character. Make your shoes, man. Make your shoes.
Yeah,
I
and his final reversion back, that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It's gut wrenching, but it's done in a really cool way, and uh, I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, it was gut wrenching. Not as gut wrenching as the similar slide back into past form like you see in Flowers for Algernon.
Well, yeah, I mean
That was
uh,
devastating. That was truly devastating. Or like the movie Awakenings. But it's still hard to see him, slide back to being in prison, being a shoemaker, and forgetting everything.
Hmm.
yeah.
At the same time, though, it's also maybe a mercy,
Well, that's what I'm
you
saying. It's
know?
a defense mechanism against, reliving the trauma, the horror.
Yeah.
So it's understandable, and in a way, he finds peace in it in that short while. He does come back out of it. So, but I mean, I think he's pretty happy during that short period where he goes back to just sort of making shoes and
Mm-hmm.
back into his
Now,
shell.
I am asking this question because I don't know. I'm not being rhetorical. Was there
Yeah.
any significance to it actually being shoes that he was making? I mean, do shoes have some significance that you're aware of, or was it just the device that he selected?
I
Um,
don't know.
I don't think there's anything mentioned in the book, but I have a headcanon reason that I always thought that his cell was sitting at just the right angle where either the gibbet or the guillotine was slightly visible, and his only sight line was probably their shoes as they were being executed. So in my head, that's the reason he sort of became a student of shoes.
Hmm.
But
Well,
I
that's
think,
just
Mitch,
in
you're
my head.
asking why Charles Dickens picked shoes. Is that what you're asking?
yeah.
Why the author picked
Oh,
shoes?
Yeah.
Dickens? I have
I
no
have no
idea.
clue.
Oh,
I
okay.
have no
I
clue.
was wondering if there was some, significance at that
I'm
time that
sure
shoes
somebody has
represented
found.
something.
I'm
Maybe it's like
sure somebody
Tarantino. He
has
has a foot
asked
fetish.
that question. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
sure somebody has written papers, literary analysis, asking that question or trying to answer that question. But if they have, I wouldn't know. But I don't know.
Well, hopefully somebody put something in the comments and we'll be able to
Yeah,
discover.
Yeah, I'm not sure why Dickens
yeah.
did, but like I said, I have a headcanon reason why the prisoner did. I was like, yeah,
Okay.
I always thought that.
Well, now
So
was the
who
guillotine in use while he was actually
Well, that's why I said the give it a
it would have
gibbet
been?
as
It would have
well,
been a
yeah.
because
yeah
hangings,
the
the
gallows
shoes would have been, just visible hanging from
swinging.
the gallows. So in my morbid mind, that's where it went. Was
Okay.
that's all he could see was the shoes.
Gotcha. All right.
So is that your favorite character in this reread, Bill?
Oh, absolutely.
How about you, Mitch?
Um, I've got issues. First of all, Darnay is a milk toast, so he doesn't
Yeah,
impress me at all. Carton is he's invisible for so much of it. Most of book two. I mean, he has
yeah,
his one scene with Lucy, um, and he expresses his love and blah blah woof woof, and that's about all we see of him. So we see that little bit at the beginning with the trial, some minor development with him and Striver,
yeah.
uh,
Right.
who's another non-character really, and then we have him show up miraculously at the end. And in fact, the end, there's too much miraculous going on, but I think Carton number is my guy on the reread without a doubt, and I put Miss Frost right there, just below him.
She's cool. Were there any character flaws that you hadn't picked up on when you were young that kind of stand out now? Either of you?
Yeah, I mean, Sidney Carton's just delusional.
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, what I thought was romantic now comes across as sort of just
Pathetic.
idiotic and ridiculous, and I'm like, why? So yeah,
In fact, it's almost creepy.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, obsession creepy.
Mm-hmm.
If I
And
can't have you, then I will do the ultimate sacrifice for you, sort of thing.
yeah.
It's like,
It's very
And
angsty.
then
too,
he
in a
asks
way.
Darnay for permission to be friends. After their initial meeting where he basically is, just rubbing him the wrong way entirely. And then years later, he says, "Can we be friends? Can I hang around the family?"
hey, you mind if I wait in the wings while you screw this up, buddy?
Yeah.
That's kind of what that's kind of what he's saying.
It almost seems that way, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. In fact, it's kind of interesting that there at the end, before you fully understand, or he gives enough hints. It almost seems as if Carton is sort of trying to make a final play for Lucy, or Lucy. Yeah, Lucy.
Yeah,
Good.
Lucy.
For some reason, I thought, no, Lucille. No, it is Lucy. Yeah. So I was wondering if maybe he was trying to make a play, because I'd forgotten about his interest in her. And when I reread it, I thought, oh, okay, he's kind of pointing you in that direction, or Dickens is pointing you in that direction. just as a bit of subterfuge. So that's what I thought in the reread. I have no idea what I thought the first time through.
I mean, honestly, I think there was a part of him that was hoping she would go, "No, I can't have you do that. Be with me." And when that doesn't happen, he kind of like, "Okay, I'm I'm gonna go do it now.
Hmm.
No, really, I'm gonna go do it now. Bye." And she's like, "See ya."
Mm.
And he's like, "Damn it. Really thought she was gonna, beg for me not to do it."
Yeah. Now, do you find it kind of, not funny, haha, but strange that he finally meets the girl at the very end?
Yeah, yeah. On their way to get their heads chopped off. I'm like, oh, now he meets somebody.
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
little messed up, man.
Yeah, and someone who appreciates him for him, and in fact, if anything, for what he's doing, the strength that he's showing,
That's the
which is a
seamstress girl,
strength.
right?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
strength though? I mean,
it's a strength of will, I would say, and it's a strength that he does not show anywhere else because he's now replaced his drinking with this internal strength to go forward with a plan because he just always thought, my life is a waste. I may as well do something good in the end. And that's how it's couched with his,
I do a
his
far, far better thing today.
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's just I
Yeah.
I think it's kind of sad that he sort of comes up with this is my solution is,
You know,
it accomplishes nothing.
Yeah.
if his sacrificing of his life saved the woman he was in love with,
Yeah, I could
I
see
could
it.
understand that. But the other man, and it's not out of a jealousy thing, it's just that's his business.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
I don't think I could do it for I don't think I could do it for the guy that the woman I was in love with was dying.
yeah.
I don't think I could swap my life for his. The one I was in love with, yeah, I could do that, but I couldn't swap it for her man. You know,
Yeah, but
I like being alive too much for that.
he had consigned himself to his fate, those many years earlier, number one. And, it's basically simply a form of suicide on his
Yeah,
part. That's really
Yeah,
I was
that's
gonna
what it
say
what it
feels
that.
like.
is.
Yeah, it is what it feels like. And I think that's always a tragedy when somebody basically gives up on life, which is what he does.
Mhm.
I do love that they set it up very early that him and the other gentleman look very, very similar with the court scene.
Right.
They're like, okay, we'll see that guy looks just like him. Maybe it
Mhm.
was him.
Let's see.
And I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
And that's reinforced too when it goes to Lafarge's wine shop
yeah,
the night before he, swaps places. And
There is
Mrs. Lafarge, oh, what a wonderful character.
uh,
oh, she's so skeevy.
Oh man, I'll tell you, in Dickens' world, she and Uriah Heep are two of the best.
Neck and neck and just
Yeah,
ick. Yeah.
yeah.
uh, Uriah Heep is a great name. I got to give that
Yeah,
credit.
it is.
That is a great name. Madame Defarge is, yeah, I don't know the last time I despised the character this much. Not even any of the stuff we've read on this channel.
Really.
Have I despised any character as much as I despise Madame Defarge? I just, the, the level of her thirst for blood and vengeance is just too far for me to condone at all. It's just, yeah, she's as bloodthirsty as Dracula, as far as I'm concerned.
I like the fact that Madame Lafarge, when she was first introduced, when Mr. Laurie goes into, retrieve Dr. Monet, she is introduced as being somewhat sleazy, someone that she's not given a lot of prominence necessarily, but there's just enough to make you go, ugh, give you that ick factor, as we said earlier.
Yeah,
And I like that little hint you get early on, and then how it blossoms in book 2 and then goes nuts.
I was about to say Blossom. It absolutely explodes. I mean, ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love it. I mean, I don't mind when there's a character who is represented as, the antagonist who is vile to their core, because anything that happens to them feels okay. Not justified necessarily, but okay, where you're not going to be that upset about it. So, yeah, her death is one of the most satisfying parts of this book.
Now,
Yeah.
I can't argue that. I was quite
Yes.
satisfied when she got shot with her own gun.
yeah, but didn't it happen awful quick? It happened too quickly.
Nah,
I don't know if maybe there should have been more of a struggle or whatever, because what was it? Miss
it's
Pross.
not an action book.
Miss Pross had what, or in like a bear hug or something like that, as I remember.
Yeah,
I don't
basically
know.
they were,
Yeah.
grappling.
I did love the fact that they're arguing with each other in 2 separate languages and can't understand each other. I thought that was brilliant.
How has your life experience changed your perspectives on this story and the characters and anybody?
I don't know if anything actually changed. I don't think it threw me in a different direction when I first read it. And it certainly isn't, forcing or influencing me to, go here or there in my current existence. So I don't know if there's that much influence necessarily.
Okay.
I'd have to say, my experience growing up and having an actual adult relationship with my wife, I have a very, very different view on romance. Um,
Than you had as a
so
kid.
yeah, I don't find the sacrifice so much romantic as I did as a kid. I find it sad.
Now, you don't trash her when she prays or anything like that, like Mr. Crutcher.
No, no. I'd be terrified. I don't even pretend like I'm
um,
in charge around here.
Yeah, I think he was an interesting character too. Crutcher.
Yeah,
It's just sort of he needed someone. Dickens needed someone to just kind of be someone who could do the dirty work for Mr. Laurie. Because Mr. Laurie, being you know a, a sound businessman, can't be troubled to
upright
do
citizen.
things. Yeah.
I'd say for me, with my life experiences, my perspective has changed in a bit, and especially in the political sense. I mean, there was a time, it was actually a few years after I read this book, where I would have been like really behind all the French revolutionaries, like hardcore behind everything they were doing. Because I had some radical left wing friend who was a big influence on my politics at the time. I have since chilled out a lot on my politics, and I'm definitely not as likely to support, the means and measures that the French Revolution took as I was when I was, say, 16, 17.
I don't know
A
how
few
you
years
could look
after.
at this and the French Revolution and go, yeah, that's a good idea. I just I don't see how that was ever in your
The
head,
idea,
man.
it was the idea. I think it was all about the idea of taking out the aristocrats and the monarchy and the nobles.
Yeah, but you got to look at
I
what comes
pro-
after that, and it's all of
yeah,
them people getting their heads cut off too. So bad
right,
idea all the way around. Once you
right.
start that, there's no
Yeah,
going back.
and you have to think
Like I said, I was
people in a
16 or
situ
17 when I would have
Yeah,
supported something like
just
this.
like
So
and people in a situation like that, there is no long-term thinking at that point. They're not plotting a revolution. They are acting out against the aristocracy in this particular case. So there was no planning, and it was whoever the most recent person we don't like is, will off with their heads.
Yeah,
It just was not. I I'm curious as to how accurate the representation is that he makes in here. I've never studied the French Revolution, so I do not know.
I don't
But
know either.
the course of events and all of the churning that was occurred over a number of years.
right.
So at some point in time, someone beyond the Lafarges had to be trying to organize or corral people into being sensible. But we're not seeing any of that here in this particular
Yeah, I'm
story.
pretty sure they cut their heads off for that. Is kind of how it went.
Yeah.
The people who were making sense and tried to sort of, okay, now that we've overthrown the aristocracy, we need to set up our own government stuff. People like, yeah, yeah. Oh, wait, now you sound just like them. Let's cut your heads off too. It's kind of how it kept going.
Mhm.
I mean,
Every single cycle. It's like, come on,
Robespierre
man.
was a leader at one point of
Yeah.
the revolution, and then he ended up getting his head taken off at the machine.
Well, eventually somebody stepped in and went, okay, listen, we're running out of people. Let's just
Yeah.
stop,
Right?
which is
Well,
great.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of neat that Carton himself had mentioned at the end when Dickens writes what Carton would have written had he a chance, and he basically said it's the Lafarges that would be the next to lose their heads. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
it makes sense because they're so out of control that in order to, as you were saying, those who want to make sense would lose their heads probably early on, yes, but
Yeah.
as time went, cooler heads would prevail, and they would have to take the heads off of the hotheads. And so I think, in the course of events, the Lafarges probably, and those like them, probably would have lost their heads.
I like to think so. At least we would have a little bit of sane outcome
Yeah.
of holding those responsible who are responsible.
Yeah, I'm going to
Because they
amend
helped kick
my.
off. In the book. They helped kick off the revolution in the first place. They were leaders on the attack on the Bastille.
Yeah.
In the book.
I'm going to amend my answer to your last question. Yes,
Go
this
ahead.
did change my perspective because I think I am going to do a little study of the French Revolution.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a
Most
mess.
of what
I'm
I
gonna
know from
warn
the
you
French
now, it's a
Revolution,
mess.
most of what I know from the French Revolution is an episode or two of stuff on something like the History Channel, and then Les Miserables, the movie, and play. I've seen it on stage once. It was good. It's my mom's favorite play. I got her the book. I have to read the book at some point.
Oh,
Here
that
I
chunk.
have that plan. I don't mind large books. It's just I hope it's good. At least the translation that I read is good. I don't care if it's as big as Count of Monte Cristo or longer. That book was fun.
Well, I mean, Count of
So
Monte
I'm gonna
Cristo
hope
is kind of top tier.
the beast. It's a beast, size wise. 600,000 words, I think it was. It's like geez, oh Bates.
Oh,
Yeah, but that story has it all, man.
Yeah, it
Revenge,
does.
revolution,
I
love,
am
sword
close to
fighting.
putting it on.
Come on.
I'm close to putting it on my top 20 books and series of all time. After just one read, it's at least in the honorable mentions. 21 through 25.
That's one of
So
those assignments at school that I fell in love with was Count of Monte Cristo. I love that book.
that must have been a whole semester.
I think I got through it in 6 weeks, is what it took me.
Oh, yeah. What about the rest of the class?
Oh, I have no idea, man. I
Yeah.
didn't talk to anybody. I was that nerdy kid in the corner reading all day.
That was me too. Were there things that you had forgotten? Anything else that you had forgotten since your first read?
About
That pleasantly
90% of it.
surprised. Well,
Yeah.
that pleasantly surprised you. I've got one, and it's the one thing I like in this book. Was that opening scene in front of when we first meet the Defarges, when we're in front of their wine shop, and there's that broken casket spilling wine all over the ground on the street, and people are. I just kind of dug the image that I had in my head of all these people trying to get drink wine up off the muddy concrete, or muddy stone road paved road, stone paved road.
Yeah. It was the perfect metaphor for how poor everyone was, and basically setting you up to how desperate the peasants are.
Right.
And it foreshadows the bloodshed spilled on the streets that's
Ooh,
to come.
I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the red
Yeah.
wine.
Yeah, just blood pouring all over the place, and the peasants drinking it up. The poor
I
people
forgot how
drinking up the
awesome Miss
blood.
Pross was.
Mhm.
That's good.
Yeah.
So, she was one of those characters where I was like, I really like this character. I know it's a minor character. We don't go that much into it, but everything about this character I dig. So
Minor
Yeah.
characters count too.
I dug her. And yeah, I'd forgotten all about her. So I'd say that's my big one.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about her taking out Madame Lafarge at the end. That
Yeah, same.
yeah,
I knew somebody did, but I couldn't remember who it was.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
I could kind of see it coming too when Lafarge is walking down the street, and then you've got Miss Pross with Crutcher, and then Lafarge coming down the street, and he's just kind of bouncing back between the two scenes until she finally just appears in the doorway after Crutcher had left. So it's like, oh yeah, okay, all right, I got it.
Yeah, I literally don't remember anything. Don't remember, the book enough to, pick out anything that, anything else other than that wine. Let's see. Are there any elements of this book that clash with today's social and/or political climate that are problematic for you? In other words, has the story aged well in the years since you first read it or since it was written?
Well, I mean,
we can go down a political morass with that. I'm
Yeah.
thinking back what happened here a few years ago.
yeah,
Mm,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, honestly, everything about this book is sort of set in its time and its era, and it fits for that time and era, and it's sort of a reflection of that. So to hold it to the standards of today's writing just feels wrong.
Okay.
Are we talking about today's writings, or are we talking about today's
Well, I mean,
environments?
Both.
the way they intermesh. I mean,
Oh,
with
okay.
today's standards and what we would find acceptable in a book today, you can't really hold something that was written in 1800s and sort of say, burn it, this is evil, because it's got people
Right.
getting their heads cut off and revolution and stuff like that. We're not that kind of show. I don't see us being like that. I mean, I could find problems with pretty much anything you put in front of me. I'm sure if I dug enough, I could find a problem somewhere.
Yeah.
So with this one, it just feels wrong to sort of. I mean, this isn't Kurt
Try.
Vonnegut using the N-word type situation where
Yeah.
we can all go, that is freaking wrong.
Well,
Right.
and it also seems to me that in most of what I'm reading has come out recently, yes, we have this type of thing occurring, but it's always the good guys who are doing it. It's the rebels that we're behind. It's not the rebels that
Right.
we abhor. So I think for the most part, and I haven't read anything recently that follows this, where those that are rebelling are actually, quote, the bad guys. I mean, they're in a situation that, we can feel for them and such. It's just the methodology is wrong. Our armed resistance now is always the good guys. And I
Seems
get a
like
little
it.
tired of that after a while, you know?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
100%.
Well,
I see what you're saying.
I've seen it flat out said. I'm a big Star Wars fan. Everybody should know that. And I'm one of those people who likes to refer to the Rebel Alliance and Luke Skywalker as a bunch of freaking terrorists that blew up a big military base.
Yeah.
Twice. Now think and go back to think. I think it was in Clerks where they talked about all the contractors that were working on the second Death Star. You know, those people constructing that place, and Wedge and Lando just came in and blew it all to pieces, killing all those civilian contractors that were, many of whom were probably slaves. You know, building it. You know, that's a terrorist act, but yet we watched it in the theater and we cheered it on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of perspective, you know. When it comes to whether the rebels are the good guys or the bad guys, but
Yeah. Well, the American
you know,
Revolution. It depends on which side of the
yeah,
pond you're on, right?
right.
Pretty much.
You know, all right. Here's Mitch's favorite question: what, if any, are some themes and/or character flaws that you notice now that you may have missed in your previous reading of this book? I don't know why we have those two things in one question. I need to rewrite this questions list soon and see what you think of the rewrite. But yeah, basically themes. What are some themes that stood out?
I would think themes for a story like this have been analyzed countless times.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything I can add to it.
Pretty much the duality. I mean, the whole thing is based on duality of, you know, this first paragraph sums up the themes of the book. He tells you straight out. For some people, it's great. For other people, it sucks. Let's see if we can change that in the most violent way possible, and go.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to me, the biggest theme in the book is sacrifice.
Well,
I mean, and that by far. It's a sacrifice I don't think should have been made. You know, at least the big one there at the end. But yeah, and the duality, as you mentioned, you know, a lot of couplets. You know, you've got that opening paragraph, as you mentioned, you know, broken down into 6 couplets at the beginning of it, and you've also got a pair of men who are like so closely looking, you know, look so close to each other that, you know, people could get them confused easily. You know, and that's another pairing that's there.
Right.
Quick question on that. Did you see any relationship between that and the twin brothers?
I was going to bring them up too. That you had those guys as another pair.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing that up. But yeah, there's a lot, and you could look up online and see a ton of stuff, I'm sure, on themes on this. This is a book that's probably, as you said, Mitch, has been analyzed way more than we can imagine, and there's probably a lot more out there about the themes in this than we're going to end up covering. Yeah. But there was a lot.
Yeah, one of the themes I would think, you know, you're dealing with the aristocracy and the you know, the peasants and all that. Then you've got your good guy Darnay, and he renounces what it is that his family is and has done, and so on. And I just wanted to read a really, really short thing here. This is Mrs. Darnay talking to his uncle during that period of time when he basically said, "Screw the family."
Right after the trial, yeah.
Yeah. So Darnay says, "We have so asserted our station, both in the old times and in the modern time also, that I believe our name to be more detested than any name in France." His uncle responds, "Let us hope so. Detestation of the high is the involuntary homage of the low." When I read that line, I was like, okay, this is what the book's all about.
This is why they cut people's heads off. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, for an uncle to say it is, you know, we are so great that they should hate us, is just, or pay homage to us through their hate, is just astounding.
Yeah, it's arrogance at its finest. And, you know, like I said, with that attitude, it's no wonder some people finally said, you know what? No more.
we're through with
Yeah.
this. Last question then is, would you recommend this book to young readers today? Or would you recommend it to older readers today, or both?
Hmm.
I would recommend it only to older readers. And
Now, I was
by
going to
that I
say,
mean
what's your definition
16
of
on up.
young?
I
Oh,
know.
okay.
I'd say 16 and up and up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to most people. I wouldn't necessarily suggest it to people who I knew were as picky about their reading as me, or were pickier than me, where they stuck literally just to science fiction and fantasy.
Right.
I'm not as sure how many pure sci-fi fantasy fans would enjoy this book. I've got other literary fiction that I think they would enjoy more than this, but yeah, I don't know if I'd really recommend this to many people at all.
Tell them Doctor
But
Who
the ones
shows
who I
up in the
would,
TARDIS. They'll read it.
oh yeah, I'll read it then.
Yeah.
I might read it again if you tell me that.
I'd actually be reticent to recommend it to most people as well, primarily because of the way Dickens writes, not so much the story or the
The
content of the
prose.
story or the characters. It's basically how he writes the prose, and
It's chunky.
yeah, it really is. I mean, if you think,
If I
you know,
if
who is the author of Wheel of Time? God,
Robert Jordan.
Robert Jordan.
Robert Jordan. Yeah, you think Robert Jordan's wordy. He doesn't hold a
Right.
candle to Dickens.
Oh no, I don't think anybody does.
Yeah. So it would have to be someone who loves to read for the sake of reading. The story itself is okay. It's not the greatest story ever told, but no
Nope.
pun. But you know, it's a good story. It's a tough read.
I can agree with that 100%. I would recommend it to anybody who's interested in sort of dipping into the classics. They have an interest in that. I would absolutely say, yeah, go ahead, knock yourself out. Beyond that,
I'll
just
tell
your
you,
casual reader of fiction, just the casual reader, I don't think would enjoy it much, but
No.
I'd be willing to let them try. I mean, hell, give it a
one group
shot.
I would definitely not recommend it to is anybody who thinks Tolkien is hard to read. If Tolkien is hard to read, you're not getting through this book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's no way you're getting through this book if Tolkien's hard for you to read. So
Yeah. And you know, for Dickens as well, this is not one of, I don't think it's his best book by any stretch.
okay,
You know, it's I have a soft spot in my heart for David Copperfield. Oliver Twist is a fun story. The Old Curiosity Shop is a fun story. But I think as far as the characters that are developed, I think David Copperfield is the best, because our main character is a good character. Here, Darnay is not a very good character. And he's
Okay.
portrayed to be, you know, the main character, though I would say he probably shares that with Dr. Monet.
He's sort of a blank canvas at the end of the day, where we don't really get much from him.
Mhm.
He's just sort of blah. It's like plain white rice with no flavor.
and
Yeah.
yeah,
And look how he ends up in the story. He's unconscious inside a carriage, and the true hero, who we've barely heard from all book long, suddenly, you know, screams out to the fore. So that I don't know if it was intentional for us to, you know, focus on Darnay and then have uh, uh,
Carton.
Carton,
Carton.
you know, end up being, quote, the main character, you know, hero or not, who cares? He
Right.
becomes the main character. He
Right.
becomes he becomes the reason for the entire story.
Yeah, he does become the
Yeah.
focal point of the entire story and the resolution. So
Well, I think we're all set, you guys.
yeah, I mean,
Next time we go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, like I said, if you're interested in the classics, this, yeah, give it a shot. Go ahead. Um, we're kind of in
I'd
that
start
mode
with Count
right
of Monte
now.
Cristo.
Yeah, well, I'd end with Count of Monte Cristo because it's my favorite. So I'd save that for
Yeah.
last, like dessert. But we're kind of in that mode right now. We're doing Pride and Prejudice on the other channel, so we're kind of going through some of the classics right now.
Yeah.
What do you have planned in the future? Anything?
For
Oh,
here, next time we come back, we will be with our friend Peter, Peter from the Netherlands. We will be discussing Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn trilogy by Tad Williams, starting with book one, A Dragon Bone or The Dragon Bone Chair.
which I
One
haven't
of
read.
my favorite. Yeah. We'll be getting to some books that I haven't read, but Bill and our guests have soon. So don't worry about that, everybody. We're going to balance it out. It's been a little unfair to Bill.
Eh,
But yeah, Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn is one of my all-time favorite trilogies. It has some of the best prose fantasy has ever seen, in my opinion. Tad Williams
Better than Le
is
Guin?
different, but I'd say it's up there.
Okay.
He's up there with Guy Gavriel Kay, Robin Hobb, Le Guin, of course. Tad Williams, I used to describe Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn as the most beautifully written trilogy I had ever read in fantasy, and I still believe that.
Okay.
I've been looking forward to rereading this for ever since we scheduled it months ago. I actually started it the other day on the audiobook just
And
because
then after that, I believe we are going to do the Dark Elf trilogy from R.A.
oh, we have
Salvatore.
one book before that. We have one book
Do
before
we? What do
that.
we have before that?
Stranger in a Strange Land.
Oh, that's right. We're
Oh.
with Josh.
Josh
Okay.
from the Way of the Leaf podcast or broadcast. One of their first time readers, but he's read Stranger in a Strange Land and he's going to reread it and join us to talk about that.
Oh,
And that'll be
nice.
fun because Josh Grox.
Yeah,
Josh
yeah.
Cox.
He's very he's very sharp.
He's an
Very
erudite.
cerebral.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. Erudite is the word I like to use to describe him.
Mhm. And actually, I love to see how he's grown on that show. If you look back a couple of years,
Oh yeah.
he was very reticent to say much and such. And now he jumps right in and he's battling them, battling the puppets as best he can. I love it.
Yep, I love it too. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Please leave us a like, some comments, and subscribe while you're down there. And come back in 3 weeks. And don't forget to be awesome.
See ya.